But this week we're going to do a kind of a recap of the finances and your budgets, why that's so important. And for a lot of us, even if you've been through Team Business Mastery, even if we've gone through this exercise before, it's really easy to get sidetracked from it. It's really easy to, get 6 months to a year down the road, and you got agents who are saying, "Hey, I want more splits. I want more splits." And then you got, different things vying for your dollars, vendors and salespeople calling you up, trying to, get in your pocketbook. And it's really easy to get things out of whack. So we've created a framework where you can keep your finances inside the guardrails, and you can run a predictable business and run a scalable business. So if you're a brand new team leader or a small team leader and you're trying to grow and scale, you need to be able to have some kind of a framework that will grow with you the entire way, right? You need to be able to keep your expense categories in certain guardrails. I'm going to give you a case study example of somebody who I've been working with, and they're what I like to call a teamerage. And I was kind of joking with Brenda a little bit ago about this. It rhymes with hemorrhage. Okay, so I give you a little sense of what that does to your pocketbook. It's very painful. And here's what happened. And honestly, like here's the psychological thing that happens that makes this occur. It is when you don't know who your customer is. I'll say that again. When you don't know who your customer is, you end up getting this screwed up. Your customer, if you're a team leader, is not your agents. Your customer is your buyers and sellers. Okay. Now, for all of us that are at EXP, I want to just push pause right here. Take your hat off, put your other hat on. Okay. Now that I own a brokerage at EXP, now my customer is my agents outside my team. On your team, your customer is buyers and sellers. Your responsibility, your brand promise is to your buyers and sellers. The customer's journey, that's so important, and you got to respect that. But when you get that out of whack, when you start treating your internal customer, your agents, as if they're the primary customer, you end up putting your priorities out of whack. And here's what can happen. So I've seen this where you're trying to placate to your agents and they're all bugging you. Everybody wants more money, right? So more money, more money, more money, more money. And what happens is your profitability shrinks because you're giving away the farm. They still need leads and you still want to help drive revenue. So you're continuing to invest in staff and marketing. And then out of necessity over time, you end up cutting expenses, which means you're cutting your value proposition to your people that you're no longer getting paid well for, right? So imagine that you have these agents who are joining your team, and then over time, they keep asking you for more and more and more money, and then you give in to some of that. So over time, some of your average commission splits paid out just kind of creeps up to a point where you no longer have enough to be able to provide the quality of leads, the ISA support, the staff support, so on and so forth. It's what I call a teamerage. It's a blend between a team and a brokerage. So the first step in all of this is really to respect what you've built and if that's what you intended to build. Okay, because we all need to be building a team. That's what we train on here. That's what we coach on. It's highly profitable. It's an incredible cash generating machine. Brokerages are broke. Okay, so don't get tempted out of a desire to make everyone happy except you and your pocketbook. Give away all of the benefit that you need to get paid for. Okay. So let's just kind of start there. So what we're teaching people is how to build a profitable team structure to where it can be sustainable over the long term and make the proper investments. All right. So we're going to do a lot of our share screen today, and I'm going to dive into this spreadsheet. A lot of you have this. If you don't, I am going to put a link to the shareable Google Doc in the chat so everybody has it. But I'm going to make sure that everybody has a copy of this today. And then if you can take this link and share it with the recording, that'd be great, Brenda. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll put it up in Kajabi both.
All right, cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat so everybody has it, but follow along with me today as we go through this. And I'm going to walk you through how I would set it up initially, and then how we're going to take a snapshot of this on a monthly basis. Okay, so let me do a quick screen share and we'll get busy. All right. So with this annual budget spreadsheet template, you notice it says annual budget. This is a year at a glance. Okay, now there's a couple ways to use this. One is looking backwards, right? What was? Another way to do this is looking forwards as, what will be. And then there's a way that we could say looking forwards as what could be. So let's forecast in some growth as well to kind of get yourself motivated, but also kind of see where we hope to end up. Once I get to this next stage of revenue, what do all these numbers look like? Because let's face it, if income is going to double over a year or two, well, so are your expenses. And if you get mentally wrapped around the axle about, oh my God, I got all this overhead, then you're going to always try and keep your overhead at a certain comfortable pace, which means your revenue is going to keep hitting a ceiling. It can never continue to grow because you're starving the engine of gasoline. You guys follow? So it's like everything is a percentage basis. We're never gambling. We're never spending money we haven't earned already, but it is always in a percentage basis of what we have brought in and what we are bringing in. Okay. And to speak to a lot of people have experienced, especially Q4 of last year, when revenue takes a dip, because you go through a market cycle and you're not insulated from that, then you need to look at a 3-month rolling average and make adjustments. Like if this downturn or whatever you may have gone through, it has a little dip, then maybe you need to make adjustments to the spend to kind of course correct to the new reality. But don't do it knee jerk. Right. And you don't want to get into a habit where you're cutting expenses every winter and then adding them back in the rest of the year. Right. You want to try and maintain some sort of stability and dependability. Years and years ago, when I was a very young team, it became the joke of some of my staff that who was going to get fired in the winter. Right. Because they knew that in the wintertime, when things got thin, it was like I was looking around to cut expenses. And it's a real common thing for people. You freak out when the money isn't there, and then when you're super slammed and you don't have the staff that you need, then you're trying to rehire people. Well, nobody wants to have a job that's not dependable. Right. They're not going to stick around for that. And you don't want that reputation. So, but if you truly are going through a market cycle, then let's look at a 3-month rolling average to determine whether or not we do need to make course corrections. So if everybody has a copy of this spreadsheet template, do this later, but walk through this with me now together. But later on, do this on your own. So the first example that I like to give people is a look back at what was. Okay, so we're going to pretend like you don't grow at all. So look back at the last 12 months, or in some cases, maybe last year. What volume did you do? Let's not bank on any growth. The next stage of this is from a expense standpoint. Let's plug in expenses that are known expenses that we're currently spending. Now, so some of you say, well, last year I had this lead source or that lead source, and then we ended up cutting it out because it wasn't working. And so we no longer have that. Okay, well, let's not count that. Let's look at what you're currently spending money on. Take this month, snapshot in time and say to yourself, if the volume stays the same as last year and my expenses don't change, in other words, they're exactly what I'm spending this month, at this snapshot in time, then what can I expect if we ride this out for the rest of the year? Okay, so this is sort of what I'll call a baseline. This is your baseline of what you're going to do. So let's just say, for example, a relatively small team, you're going to do 100 units this year. Easy math, $300,000 average sales price, 3%. If your numbers are different, of course, you can play with that. Transaction fee income, I just plugged in $495. Percentage of collection. By the way, everything in yellow is the fields you can change. If it's not in yellow, don't change it. Don't mess with it. It's going to screw up the spreadsheet. By the way, before you do anything with this, you're not allowed to change my spreadsheet because you're all viewers. But what you want to do first things first is just come up here and say, make copy. See that? File, make copy. And then you'll rename it, make it something else that you want it to be. We're just going to say, class example. All right, cool. So now I'm not going to mess with the template because I can change it. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so now I'm actually going to change this one in front of you. So with this here, plug in all of your current assumptions. What's your average sales price for sellers? What's your average sales price for buyers? Units for buyers, units for sellers, commission percentage that you're getting paid as a buyer's agent. Don't put in what you would like to get paid. If your market is currently offering you 2.5% and that's what you're getting as a co-op commission, then put that in there. Right? There are ways to make that higher, and we can discuss that. But if you're currently getting a co-op commission of 2.5%, plug that in. Right? Sellers, plug in whatever you're getting on your side of the seller transactions, transaction fees, and percentage of time collected. Now, for some of you, when you went through this exercise the first time, you did not have what I'm about to show you, which is this little matrix. Okay, this little matrix right here, rows basically 15, 16, and 17. This matrix is going to help you figure out what your blended average commission is right inside of this spreadsheet. Okay, so your blended average is going to say, what are you paying your buyer's agents on team-generated business, and what percentage of the time does that occur? What are you paying your buyer's agents on their own self-generated business, and what percentage of the time does that occur? You guys follow along? It's the same thing for listings. Listing agent commissions paid, 30%. Percentage of the business that the percentage of time that occurs, 75%, so on and so forth. If you're running some sort of a schedule different than this, then plug in whatever your numbers are. Okay? Because we want to reflect reality, not what we hope it will be. Because we can always duplicate this spreadsheet, and we're going to create another instance of what could happen. If we make these changes, how does that affect my numbers? Right? Okay, so as you can see, the numbers in this, which in my example here is pretty much the recommendation that I have and how we ran our team. 50% for team-generated business, 60% for self-gen, 30% for listing business generated by the team, and 40% for self-generated business that came from the team. Okay, so if you're going to run something like this at about a 75% team-generated business, approximately on both sides, 75-25, then you're going to be running about a 43.5% commissions paid out. 43.5 commissions paid out. By the way, that's fantastic because it produces a gross profit margin of 56.5. Anything under 55%, you're going to struggle because you're not going to be able to do what I'm going to show you down below if you're under 55% cost of gross profit, rather. Does everybody follow me so far? I can't tell you, and it's probably hundreds at this point, how many people I've walked through this with them and their team. And it's all screwed up at the top. And I tell them, look, we've got to fix this thing up at the top, which means your commission's paid out until we can do anything down below. And it's a catch-22. Well, I don't want to take money away from my agents because then they'll leave me, but then I can't afford the value that they want and need to grow my team. And so you're caught in this perpetual like catch-22. You can never afford to do the things you need to do to generate the value you need to generate to be able to command the splits that you need to command. Does that make sense? So it's this balance of cost versus value. And you got to strike the balance where it's heavy on the value, but you're getting paid for it. Right? Because the alternative is basically the brokerage model, i.e. the teamerage model, what we talked about, which basically says I'm giving away everything and now I cannot afford to do anything for them. All right. So when you're doing this spreadsheet, just keep in mind item 17 here needs to be less than 45% such that line 22 can be over 55%. All right. So let's assume that you got that right. Let's assume that your splits are good. I'm going to give you an example of the other way around real quick, just so you can see this. By the way, you can see on here how 55% buyers and 45% sellers. This is just easy math because it's 100 units. This right here is one of the reasons why this down here is the percentage that it is. I'm going to show you an example of a team that I'm talking to right now where they are 90% buyers. And I want you to see what it does to that number down here. So pay attention to line 22, this percentage. And let's say that you don't know how to generate listings and that hasn't been your focus and you're trying to do everything based on buyers. Watch what happens to that number when you say I'm 90%. Now I have just changed my gross margin down to below 50% when 55 is the minimum. So my splits and even my percentage of time that occurs hasn't changed. So your compensation plan may be spot on. But if you're a buyer heavy business, you're screwing yourself. You follow me? You got to create inventory. If you want sticking power in this industry long term, you got to own the market. And the way you own the market is you own the inventory in the market. Okay? We have to own the product inventory to be able to have any staying power in this industry. Why? Well, a couple of reasons. One is because it costs a lot less for us to pay an agent, for example, to do a listing, and it takes 1/10 of the time to service it. Right? This is one of the reasons why I tell team leaders, like, doing listing appointments is one of the last things on earth you want to give up, because your hourly rate is ridiculous. It's through the roof. You know, my listing agents used to average between 65 and 95 transactions a year. My buyer's agents weren't anywhere close to that. Right? Why? Because they go out, they do a listing appointment, and that's it. They're not showing house after house after house after house on 3 or 4 different outings. They don't have to write offers on many, many different properties to get one accepted. It's a way different value for the hours spent. Right? But if you don't have a good percentage of your team's income that's paying out the agents at 30%, then this is what's going to happen right here. Okay. So you want to have, let's just discuss this real quick. So if I have let's say 65% buyers and 35% sellers, let's just do that math real quick. You can see that it's getting real close to being like right at that bubble where we need it to be. Right? 65 is almost like the maximum you want to have your buyer percentages at the splits that I've shared with you. Okay. But if you can do closer to 60-40, that's like the goal. 60-40 or better, to where you're not quite tilted as far or skewed as far in the direction of being just a buyer's agent team. You can build a wildly profitable real estate team that really just focuses on listings and making buyers the afterthought. But as team building has become popular in the or basically the 2000s, most everybody has got an IDX website, generates leads, maybe has ISAs making phone calls and gives leads to buyer's agents. And I mean, that's not marketing. That's just buying traffic. You're buying traffic to your website. That's it. That's not real marketing. If you learn how to generate listings, there's marketing involved. It's branding. There's a value proposition. There's USPs, right? All right. So let's go continue with this sheet. As we go down here, when we get to line 25, the way we've designed this is just to show you what a net profit should look like if you're targeting a 25% net profit. So if I were to take your profit margin out and make you live on what's left, then this particular team example, the owner should benefit $225,000 for owning it. Not for working in it, but for owning it. And there's a difference between getting paid for what you do, i.e. real estate commissions up here, or maybe even leadership override bonuses down here. This is getting paid for what you own. It's a completely different thing. Okay. So if I back this out, then this is what I have remaining for all my expenses. Now, I've also built into this some offset income. By the way, in this income and expenses, I'm not really counting transaction fee income. So when you'll look at the gross commission income here of 900,000, this is not including transaction fee income, just FYI, not in my example sheet. Okay. The transaction fee income drops down here as an offset to salaries. So in this example of 100 units, you're talking $44,000 a year in annual offset income from transaction fees that offsets the salary budget of 12%. So it's not quite, 40%, 45% maybe of the annual salary budget. All right, leadership overrides. If you are the team leader, then you're getting paid, X dollars a month for running sales meetings, leading the team, doing trainings, etc. In this case, you're talking about $27,000 a year. If you're a small team and you are also the lead buyer's agent because you don't have that person yet, then pay yourself the 5% bonus on all your buyer side transactions, another $27,000 a year in this example. If you are the lead listing agent also, which you probably are because you're the only listing agent at this point, at this volume, then you're going to get a little bonus of 5%. Now, why do we do this? If we're running a small team, why even do this exercise of paying yourself for stuff? It's because I want to see whether or not you're subsidizing your team's lack of profitability. Does that make sense? It's like, I want to see if you're donating your time or donating your commissions to make yourself look more profitable than you actually are. You guys follow? So in this example, pay yourself, or if you have some of these positions filled, pay them so that you can really feel the impact of that to the bottom line on your profit and loss statement. And as some of you on this call know, when you're doing the accounting, there's something in accounting called direct expenses and indirect expenses where you can actually pay yourself a salary, for example, if that's what your accountant tells you to do, but pay yourself a salary as an indirect expense so it doesn't show up on a direct profit and loss statement. Okay, but your direct expense might be your leadership overrides or your commissions when you list and sell a house. Those are direct expenses because we do want to see that for the operational income and expenses of your team. All right. Now let's get down below. And for those of you who are not familiar with how I've built this spreadsheet down below, this section right here of expenses, this section is broken into several pieces. One is using these yellow boxes to adjust the percentage to reflect the budget dollar amounts in the column next to it. So these two, column B and C go together. Okay. So you're going to adjust the percentages here to reflect the dollar amounts that are accurate here. Right next to it, we've kind of put up here the MREA suggestions. For those of you who come from the Red Book world or MREA world, you kind of, know some people pay attention to that, what those guidelines are. I've just put them up there for you guys to look at. I think a lot of times they're accurate. Sometimes they're not. I think they're very light in the marketing category. This green section in the middle, though, is what I consider offset income. Now, we could add in a couple more columns here. For example, you see offset income here from transaction fees that we've dropped down below. But then we also have vendor income. What is vendor income? Well, vendor income could be what your mortgage company pays Zillow for you. It could be your mortgage company or title company income that you are generating because you have a JV relationship with them, or some sort of a branch of your own that's generating revenue. Okay. Or maybe you have, or maybe both, where you own your own mortgage branch and that mortgage branch is contributing some dollars towards the marketing. Basically, what we want to see here on line 39 there is, here's the marketing total that is spent, including, expenses that might be paid for by a vendor, and then how much of that is being paid for by that vendor, or how much other benefit am I getting from those vendor relationships. There's another thing that maybe we'll do a whole separate training on sometime called a vendor partner program. This could be 20 or 30 different vendors that you recommend all the time. People from maid services to painters to roofers to sewer companies to all these different vendors that you recommend and send business to. Get them all paying you $200 a month or $250 or something to be a part of your preferred vendor list, to go out in your buyer packets, your seller packets, be invited to your open houses, your client events, and so on and so forth. Let them get some benefit from affiliation from you, but then you get to basically fund your sphere of influence past client marketing program. Those sorts of pieces of revenue can flow right in here to the vendor income. Okay. What's another piece of offset revenue that we have not taken into consideration here? Occupancy and rent. Now, in a lot of the office spaces that we rented for our teams, we went in and got a larger space than we needed, but then we turn around and backfilled it with mortgage, title, or insurance, typically. Or in some cases, maybe even like you turn your office suite into an executive office suite, and you sublet some rooms to affiliated businesses, a home inspector or various people. Now you've got rental income. So maybe your occupancy and rent was higher in percentage than you wanted it to be, but we have offset revenue from rents that bring that back down. Okay, so that could be something, if you wanted to adjust the spreadsheet, you could add that in right there. Okay, so what I'm showing you right here in the expense section is approximately, and I say approximately, what we ought to be spending. Now, some of you are already way out of whack with some of these, and some of it is okay for periods of time as long as you don't hover here for years, right? Because some of you have, committed to office space that might be twice as much because your volume is just so low. But as you grow, the percentage will decrease. Because for a lot of us, we make investments, for example, into office space that technically we could have a business triple the volume inside the same square footage. We don't necessarily need triple the square footage when we triple in volume. So some of these are fixed costs. Okay, and rent would be one of those. So don't beat yourself up if some of your percentages are a little bit off. Some of that you will grow through as your team is scaling. One thing you'll notice down here is that we don't have anything for auto expense. Nothing. Zero. Auto expense is a expense of the agent, i.e. you, right? Drew Nickel, agent extraordinaire. Zach Coletti, agent extraordinaire, right? You have your own personal corporation, your own commissions you're being paid for selling real estate. If you're going to do it inside of the same entity, the same legal entity, then do it as a indirect expense, not as a direct expense. So auto, in our examples, is an indirect expense to the team because the team doesn't own vehicles. What are the exceptions to that? Team-owned moving trucks, team-owned courier vehicles, team-owned photographer vehicles, right? Those would be considered legitimate auto expenses for a team, but not going to and from listing appointments in your vehicle. Okay. So in this example, I want to keep salaries, the guardrails is really between 12 and 14%. That's my target. 12 and 14%. So just quick and dirty math, I can sit down with you and say, okay, where are you at in terms of your gross commission income? We can do the math. Look how much you have been paid. And by the way, this is pre-brokerage. This is how much, gross you made. Commissions times average sales price times units, GCI. If you're at $1 million, then your salary budget's $120,000. Go on down here to lead gen and marketing. There are times when that could be less, but I'll tell you, for any team that wants to grow or scale and is not in the sunset years of their career, trying to just ride out SOI and Sphere business, you need to be around 15% of gross. The MREA suggestion here is 9.2, and it's very inadequate. There is one difference, though, that I'll add in here. When the MREA book was written, they really didn't have ISAs. It wasn't part of the model that was taught much back then. Inside of our lead gen and marketing budget, we include ISA support. So our lead gen and marketing is all marketing dollars spent plus ISA support. So even if it is a salary for someone that you have employed on your team, we want to show it on your P&L as an expense through marketing. Okay. So scrolling on down, you can just kind of look through these different expense categories. Try and make sure that your own profit and loss statement, your chart of accounts, kind of marries up with these general headings. Or have your accountant organize them in a way that puts them with these headings. That way it's much easier to look once a month at those bottom line expenses and say, how did I do? And month to month, you're going to see a lot of variability because there's a lot of volatility with your revenue. One month you might have 100 grand in commissions or 200 grand in commissions. The next month it might be 80, right? So because of that, you want to start looking at a bigger stretch of time, 3 months averages, 6 month or year-to-date numbers as you get later into the year. Okay. Keep an eye on your month-to-month expenses, of course, but don't look at each month and say, oh, well, I made half the revenue, so I got to cut all my expenses this month. No, we got to have a steady hand at the wheel, a very steady hand at the wheel of this boat. Even though the seas may get a little bit rough, 1 or 2 months, you're going to have to be able to maintain whatever level of service and lead flow and staff support you're providing, even when you have an off month. That's why it's really good to have banked 6 months worth of business expenses in core capital. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. All right, scrolling on down here, you look down at the bottom and you're going to see on line 47, I've got total expenses here. And then over here, I have the adjusted percentage after the offsets were dropped in. So the vendor income from mortgage, for example, or title, the offset income from transaction fees. And now I've got an adjusted number down here. And then if I come down below and I look at my actual profit margin, row D, it shows that I'm actually pulling out 22.6%. Now, for a lot of you, if you've built your business or have a substantial book of your business that's built on referral portals, I'll just say Opcity, Zillow Flex, things like that, nothing wrong with that. But you're going to have to back that out. In other words, change your commission percentage earned, your average earned commission to reflect that. And you're going to have to do some math, like look back historically and figure out what percentage of your business is that for buyers and or is that for sellers, and what is the commission you're charging the consumer. And then figure out, like, what do I need to adjust this commission percentage? Maybe it's 2.85 or 2.9, to be able to get more accurate there. But depending on what percentage of your business is coming from that, whether it's buyers or sellers, and what you're charging the consumer or what you're getting paid in a co-op, you may need to adjust this number right here in column E. Okay, so this is where you want to reflect that. So it might require a little bit of study and a little bit of math, but you need to figure out what that is right here. Because I don't want to be counting revenue that was paid to Zillow Flex in your gross revenue. Okay, so just for clarity's sake, this is for all of this revenue up here is post referral fee revenue. All right. Some of us tend to avoid math like the plague. I don't know why, but it's just a thing. So let's make it our resolution in getting a grip on our finances to really own this, to really understand it and use it to our advantage. Okay, going on down here below, you're going to see that I have this where you have the actual breathing profit margin right here. Some people think to themselves, okay, well, great. I'm going to take my commissions as income. Yes, good. You should. I'm going to take my lead listing agent revenue and my team leader revenue as income. Yes, you should. And I'm also going to take my $203,550 as income. No, you shouldn't. What? Yeah. Live off of, for the most part, live off of what you do for your team until you have a 6-month core capital built. 6 months of expenses. So if I'm talking about a total expenses right here of $292,000 a year on your budget, you want to target getting towards $145,000 in the bank. 150G in the bank. Well, what if, well, that will take forever to get there. Man, not really. But it will take some time. If you can't avoid dipping into the cookie jar here, then only take half of it, right? Maybe take half of your profits until your core capital is established, or take only what's necessary until you have core capital established. Once you have core capital established, then great. Take a full distribution if you want to. Does that make sense? Because we want to make sure we have plenty of reserves, and it keeps us from making really knee-jerk or dumb decisions. Okay. All right. So that's step one. We said, okay, what did we do the last 12 months, right? In terms of our units sold and our commissions earned. What did we do the last 12 months? And then we looked at expenses based on what we're currently doing right here. Like, what are we currently spending this month as a recurring expense? Look at your salaries, look at your marketing spend. If everything stays the same, what do you think I'll profit this year if nothing else changes? Then what I want you to do is take this example spreadsheet and duplicate it. And when you do duplicate it, you're going to want to call this, oops, delete, okay. And if we duplicate this, I want to duplicate it and rename it forecast model. Now, you could rename this example model one, for example, you could rename that current model, and then forecast model. What I like to do with the forecast model is still not assuming any growth, but making the necessary changes to your expenses. Maybe you need to change your expense category, your commission plan to agents. Or maybe you need to change the percentage of business that's coming in for buyers or sellers, or the percentage of business that's agent generated versus team generated. Right? So tweak this a little bit, maybe add in your transaction fees if you don't charge them, or increase your percentage of the time it's collected if you're not getting it paid very much. And there's lots of ways to do that. Okay. But this is the one place where you can say, okay, let's just still assume nothing changes. Let's still assume there's no growth, but I'm going to try and improve my profitability either by getting my expenses under control or adding in expenses where I don't have any, or tweaking my splits or collecting my transaction fees, so on and so forth. Now, once you've made these changes, this is what I'll call like the foundation. This is what I call the foundation. So your forecast model, the first one here, is like your foundation model. So kind of look at current as what was. Look at your forecast model as the new normal. Like this is a healthy model that I want to scale up from here. All my percentages are in line. All of my commissions are where I want them to be. Now we want to add some gas on this fire. All right. So the next step will be duplicate this one last time. And we're going to rename this 2023 forecast with growth. And for some of you who did your annual business planning, you said, oh, I want to do 250 units this year. I want to grow from 250 to 400. See what that looks like. Like, what does it really look like? If I can get this thing doing 150 buy sides and 120 listing sides a year for 270 units, that's, 2.4 million in gross. What does that look like? Well, heck, that's a $600,000 net. That's nice. Right? What would it look like if you were grossing 4 million or 6 million or 8 million? Okay. So play around with this. I'm going to take like a 2-minute break here, a little nature call, but I want you guys to open up the spreadsheet, play around with this a little bit, and think up some questions, and then we're going to reconvene here in about 2 minutes and keep going again. Cool.
Good grief. Thank you.
Hey, so on line 40 where it says lead generation marketing, did you say that includes if you have a staff member that runs your marketing department?
No.
Okay.
That includes ISAs.
Okay.
Or either generation or incubation of leads, like the conversion process.
And Mike, Zach put a question in. He had to run, but he put his question in so you could answer it and he could listen to it on the recording.
Okay. What was his question?
In the chat, the breathing profit margin different from the profit that you pay first?
Yeah, so the profit first model, if you follow that strictly, means you literally take the money out of the account, you stick it in a separate bank account, and you don't touch it, right? That's the profit first model. I don't necessarily teach that, not that it's bad. It's just I want you to see what that is I want you to embrace that that's yours. You should be claiming that, and then learn to run your business profitably on what's left. So we're not physically like taking the money out. So your breathing profit margin is basically, when I say breathing, I mean your business is always in some state of contraction or expansion. And if you're in growth mode, it's quite possible that your expenses for a month or two may actually outrun your revenue. Okay. And so you're going to have a couple of months maybe where you're running a 15% profit margin, but then annualized, once you kind of take the highs and the lows out, maybe you actually are 22% or 24%. The goal is to get to 25. If I see teams that are running a profit margin of 30%, I mean, like on the high side of this, almost always when we dive into it, they're not paying themselves, or they're not paying something, like they're subsidizing or hiding something in there that's not being paid properly, or they're a really, really small team and they're just like content with staying small. So a very mature business that has lots of sphere business, lots of, SOI business, they're not growing, not trying to grow. You can run a 30% profit margin, but it's just not, that's not scalable. But you may end up be choking the golden goose by trying to squeeze all the profits out of it, and you got nothing left, to actually grow and scale a team in a healthful way. So hopefully that made sense. Got Rupesh, you said gross profit should be at least 60% or 55%. So Rupesh, the gross profit that I'm talking about in this spreadsheet is not including your leadership overrides. So prior to leadership overrides, your gross margin should be 55% minimum. 60% is awesome. If it's more than 60%, that would surprise me. But if you can get in that 55 to 60% gross margin, then you can make the numbers work. On your P&L, as you know, we include your leadership overrides in cost of goods sold. So it is up in the top from a profit and loss statement standpoint. So I think I answered your question there. What else?
I think most of the rest of them got answered.
ET will usually tell you what you're collecting percentage-wise on each side. Yes, true. Yeah, Rupesh uses CTE, and that when you plug in your agent commissions, you're also seeing what the team's portion of that was. So cool. What kind of questions we got? I'll open it up for anybody who's got questions or something they want to wrap about relative to team finances.
Where do we put in the cost for our staff? Did you have that on there? Did I just miss it?
Staff?
It's like we have a front desk person, an admin person, and then.
Yeah, that's all in line 38 salaries.
Oh, 30. Okay.
Yeah, line 38
Oh, gotcha.
is your salaries, and it's going to be between 12 and 14% of your gross.
Okay.
So for example, I'm sitting here with Jennifer's team, we went through these numbers yesterday. We look at the gross revenue. We do math, we figure out what the percentage guardrails are. We look at, okay, let's add up all of our salaries. Where are we at? And then we have room to hire that next person. Because sometimes here's what happens. You're going to hear people saying, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so swamped. I need more help. We need to hire more people. You look at the budget and there's not room for it. Or vice versa. It's like you're trying to keep your expenses low. And you think you're doing a good thing, but you're like at half of what you should be spending in salaries. Right. So sometimes the opposite, which is that one, where we're just squeezing the golden goose and like not willing to hire anybody out of fear, is preventing growth. And this is one of the things we discussed yesterday with Jennifer. It's like what we're spending on staff has a direct correlation to how well our agents can sell real estate. Why? Because when for example, if we're doing the basic transaction coordination for people, I mean, like really, really basic stuff, then they're too involved. The agent is too involved in the transaction once it goes under contract. What's the downside of that? Well, human nature says, I'm going to hover out of fear and not go out and sell another house. So I got to keep the agents on offense, selling more houses, driving more revenue. The only way to do that is to take everything off of the plate except that. Because when an agent sells a house and has a future commission owed to them, now they just want to hover over the deals, and they're the worst at it because it's all like emotional to them. But if there's a high degree of trust and a high degree of service coming from that transaction coordinator who's extremely capable, then they can give the agent the Heisman and keep them away from the deal and just say, go sell another house. I got this. I'll let you know if there's something you need to be worried about. So just be careful. We're not overspending, but we're not underspending where we need to be. So keep it in those guardrails.
Yeah, I had the ISA and the salaries. That's why I was confused at where all that went.
Yeah, if they're actually on staff and you're W2ing them, then yeah, you want to do a little mental, paper calculation to move that out of salaries and over to marketing to see how that looks.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, CTE has been pretty good as a very inexpensive way to track a lot of these things. As you get into your accounting systems, you want to make sure that your accountant has your chart of accounts set up properly, and that you're able to look at that once a month. And once a month, sit down and go back to this spreadsheet with your final P&L numbers, especially your year-to-date numbers, but monthly and year-to-date numbers, and go back to this spreadsheet and just spend some time with it. How are we doing? Do I need to do anything? Is there anything actionable here? And just ask yourself some critical questions. In the case of Rupesh, he just recently hired a company. It's called Simple Numbers. And I just did a call with them here with Rupesh here a week ago. And I was very impressed with those. If you guys, any of you know Andy Mulholland, he's a guy who's run real estate teams just like us. And now he's got a financial accounting and management, financial management platform that he offers. And he's really sharp. Very similar to Streamline Business Solutions, but probably a little more personalized service. But that's been pretty good. And I think their website was simple-numbers.com. simple-numbers.com. So if you guys want to go check that out, I was very impressed with them. So, well, thanks guys. Thanks for showing up. Hopefully everybody else can catch this on the recording, but this is an incredibly important part of what we do as agents and being responsible leaders for our team is being a good steward of our finances, making responsible investments where we need to be, and making sure that we're not overspending, and making sure we're not trying to run towards the brokerage model by pretending that the agents are our customers. They're not, right? We need to make sure that we are keeping the buyers and the sellers as our customer and the agents as the ones to serve our customers. These are your customers, right? And they're not the agent's customers. They're your customers. You own them. You paid for them. You got their hearts and minds. You hire agents to serve your customers. That's the team model. It's very different than the brokerage model, but just don't get those mixed up. So hopefully you guys got something good out of this today. Have an awesome week.